Welcome to Open Oven. My name is Mike Smith. I am, as I've told you before, I am a guy who likes to cook, trying to create some really easy recipes for you, things that are easy for you to make at home, limited ingredients. So today we have an interesting recipe for you. I haven't made this recipe myself for a very long time. I love my breakfast lunches. So what we're going to make today is we're going to make strawberry crepes. So we're going to make a strawberry filling and learn how to make crepes. For those of you unfamiliar with what crepes are like a small pancake, very, very thin. There's no rising agent to it, so it's a very thin pancake, very famous. If you watch movies, very famous in Paris and European cities. Many specialized restaurants in North America will have crepes. I know in New York City and places like that, there are places that all they make is crepes. So we're going to give it a shot and show you how you can make crepes fairly simply at home. We're going to make strawberry. Of course, you could do this with any fruit. You want to try to avoid the soft, kind of wet fruits. Even apples get a little bit tougher because they're quite liquidy. So we're going to start with strawberries. I've got some cut over here. You want to be able to cut these pretty small, because we're going to end up cooking this and we don't want it to take forever to cook. So we're going to cut them into at least quarters, if not smaller. And so that we can get that started. I'm going to use about a pound. I know most recipes is asking for a couple of pounds of strawberries. I'm just going to do about a pound and cut our ingredients in half, and it makes it really, really easy. If you're obviously cooking for more people, you could start with a couple pounds of strawberries and then just follow the recipe we're going to put up there. Will be for 2 pounds of strawberries. Like I said, I'm just going to cut that in half just for a little ease of making. There you go. You're getting an idea of the sizing. I love my breakfast. I love having pancakes. I know when you consider breakfast restaurants, I love my bacon and eggs, but pancakes are extremely popular in breakfast restaurants. You don't see crepes a whole lot in our part of the world, but in other parts of the world, they're quite popular. So I'm just going to turn that stovetop on. We're using our ceramic stovetop. Obviously, we use a regular stovetop. If you have a non-stick stove or a pot, that's best. If not, you just can't put it on too high of a temperature. You don't want to put the ingredients in there and then have it burn to the bottom. You want to be able to make sure that these are going to heat up without burning. So there we go. I might even have a little more than a pound there. And these are washed, obviously. I'm just picking out some of the stems that might have been left over. Obviously, you want to remove the stems. I'm going to throw those in here again. I don't want it to sizzle. So you got a little sizzle there. I'm going to turn it down a bit. That just tells me I don't want it too hot. And what we're going to do is, for 2 pounds, like I said, you're looking at 2 cups of sugar. I'm going to use 1 cup because we've got a little less strawberries than that. We're going to put that sugar in there. And we're going to start mixing the sugar with the strawberries. You want to mix that up pretty well. There's no liquid in there yet, but as you heat this up, obviously the strawberries are going to start to melt and create a little bit of gunk, for lack of a better word. You can see they're starting to coat the strawberry already. We're trying to create, like I said, a filling. So, it should look a little bit more like a jam or like a thick jam. By the time you're done, just let that be. We're going to take cornstarch. We're going to use, the recipe calls for a tablespoon of cornstarch and a tablespoon of water. We're going to be even less than that because I've got a little less. I don't mind using a little more water. But we're just going to do a teaspoon. You want to mix that cornstarch up with the water. There's not a lot in there, but we still want to mix it up decently so that it's not powder. Give that a stir. Once again, you can take a look. That's starting to bubble nicely now. No problems, not sticking to anything. So we know that our temperature is pretty good. It's starting to look a little liquidy. Again, make sure your cornstarch and water are mixed up together. And that's just going to be a little bit of a thickening agent in there. And when we come back from our first break, we're going to actually make the crepe, which for sure has its challenges, but we're going to give it a whirl. And like I said, it's a really simple recipe, so there shouldn't be too many issues there. Again, if you use blueberries are a fantastic option. Peaches, anything, like I said, that's got some thickness to it. So it looks like that's pretty much ready now. I'm going to turn that down, ready to be, and then we're going to spoon that cornstarch into there. Mix that up and let that get hot, and then we're going to actually take it off the heat. So when we come back, we'll approach our crepes and see how that works out. Be right back. All right, we're back. So I've taken that strawberry mixture, and what you want to do is you want to actually completely cool that. So I put it in the fridge. Let's cool it. Make sure that's because that cornstarch will thicken it. So you put it in the fridge and you're good to go. So we've gone ahead and done that. I've got a skillet here. That's what we're going to use next, obviously. But we're going to get to creating the crepe itself. I'm going to need some butter. I want to have melted butter. So I'm going to actually just take this. I'm going to put it into our oven in the back, and we're going to be able to use that. I'm going to use about, I would say about a half a cup, maybe in this, to a quarter of a cup of butter. Don't put your fingers in it. It doesn't usually work that well. But we're gonna just warm that up, get it melted. Clean up my mess. And then we'll get, I think I got some strawberry in there. All right. So what we're looking for, first of all, we need an egg. I'm going to put the egg in, and I'm going to whisk the egg before we start adding everything else. And we'll go from there. Oh, there it is. We're going to grab a quarter cup of milk. Actually, I guess it's about a quarter cup of water and milk, so I'm going to pour the water in there. This is a third. third, so a little bit less than a third. And we're going to stir that up. The recipe calls for salt as well. I'm not a big salt user. I don't find it really adds anything. It's different, obviously, if you're using some type of agents where you need the salt to counteract it, but in this case, I don't think we really need to add salt to it. So I want to mix that really, really well. Just as if you were doing pancakes, if you don't want lumpy pancakes, then you've got to stir it, a fair amount. So I'm just going to check on our butter. Looks like that's ready to go. Okay, you want it really mixed very, very well. All right, we're going to put our flour in. Obviously, this is the most important element. It's going to give us the pancake or so. Actually, I want half a cup. We're going to use a half a cup. We'll get that well mixed. You do need to take some time here again. You want to get it so that there's, if you can see, there's still a fair amount of lumps in there. You want to get those lumps out. You do not want this, much like pancakes, when you make pancakes, you can make them a little bit thicker, you make them, thinner. This you definitely do not want thick because you're going to be making a very, very thin pancake. So you need to make sure that that's quite thin. I'm going to grab the butter out of the microwave, our little container. I'll put about half a teaspoon or so of butter, maybe a teaspoon in there. Just mix that. You can see it's starting to look pretty consistent. You're not really seeing a lot of, and then scrape all that stuff off the sides. Glass bowls are awesome for this because you can see everything, right? You're not leaving a lot of dried powder on the sides. This is, at this stage, if you wanted to add any flavoring to the crepe before the filling, so if you wanted to add cinnamon or you wanted to add vanilla, something like that, you could do that. I'm actually going to add a tiny touch of vanilla. Good. Mix that in there. I'm just going to get our burner up. And again, you don't want this too hot. Best to use a non-stick pan, which is what this is. I have used lots of non-stick pans in the past, especially when you're doing pancakes, and certainly when you're doing crepes. The last thing you want is for it to stick. So I will actually end up using a cooking spray, even though it is a non-stick pan. That's my preference. If you have a really great frying pan, then you won't need to do that. So when we come back from the break, you can see that that's nice and liquidy, no lumps. We're going to make our crepes. Hello, and we're back, and so now we're going to make our crepes. I have the non-stick pan on here. We're letting that get nice and hot. Like I told you before, I prefer to still use a cooking spray just to make sure you don't have to heavily coat it, but certainly make sure that your wonderful crepes are not going to stick. So we do have to have that hot, just like anything that you're using cooking spray. You don't want your product to be absorbed by the cooking spray. I'm going to give myself some room so that we've got a chance to show you what a crepe looks like when it's done. And then, just like pancakes, you can do a little few drops. When they start to sizzle, you're probably hot enough. So we're going to make that a little hotter. I can see some smoke coming off there now, so we know it's hot enough. Try our crepe. Spread that out. And like I said, it just starts to look like a little tiny pancake. I have a wonderful spatula. If you happen to have one of these, it's great, obviously, for crepes. Not everybody does. You can use a regular spatula, but this is wonderful. Just make sure it's not wet. Make sure it's ready to go. And again, you got to keep an eye on this until you know kind of how hot your pan is. You want to kind of take a quick peek. No browning yet, but look at, yeah, you can see that, but it's starting to look exactly what it's supposed to look like. If you remember our filling over here, so we cooled the filling. You want to make sure it cools, obviously, because if it's hot, really, really hot, it may actually melt through the crepe. So I've cooled it. It gives a chance for it to thicken. And it looks like it's ready to go. Looks yummy. Just going to give that a little bit of a stir. Looks wonderful. All right, let's check this crepe. I think it looks like it's ready. I'm going to flip that. There you go. Very tiny little pancake. Let that finish cooking. If you're going to eat your crepes right away, no problem. Put them on a plate. Put them on a plate as you make them. If not, and you want to put them in the freezer, obviously I have parchment paper. You can use wax paper, parchment paper. And you can take the crepe off. You can see that it will start to curl a little bit. I'm just going to push that down and make sure that it gets cooked. Yeah, and it's coming along nicely. In fact, I think I can turn it down a little bit now. I'm going to flip it one more time just to see what it looks like. I think the edges still need to go. And it's starting to smell like it's supposed to smell. See that? There, and we'll put a little bit more oil again. The pan is doing a great job. It is not sticking, so you see that, you know it's hot enough. So we're ready to put another one on. Of course, you could make these any shape you like. If you wanted triangle crepes, you could pour them in a triangle. With the amount of, you can see the amount of smoke, it's probably a little hot. So I'm going to turn that back down and let that one cook. So, like I was saying, if you wanted to store these, you would let that cool, but I would just take out multiple pieces of parchment paper and I would lay them on top of each other so that you would store them. If you were storing them in the freezer, they're not going to stick. If you put them on top together, in no time they'll be stuck together. So that's how you would store them. If you had a sealed container, just put a piece of parchment paper or wax paper in between each of them. All right, let's take a look and see where we're going because we've got a nice hot pan. It looks like it's, and it, much like pancakes, it'll start to bubble. Then you know it's pretty much cooked on that other side as soon as you start to see the bubbles come through the top. So I'm going to flip that. Remember, there's a fair amount of sugar in these. They're nice and sweet. No problem there. So that's almost finished. The edges are not quite done there yet. So I'll flip that, push it down with my nice spatula, make sure those ends get done. Here. Turn our burner off. I'm actually going to set that to the side so it doesn't burn. And here's our crepes. So depending on how big you make your crepes, if you want to put your filling on the inside. And then you're going to be basically or much or little as you want to put it them. Make them like a little bit of a line. If you want to roll them, that's how I would do them, like that. And then I would flip it. Roll them in a line like so. I would flip it. You can use anything to kind of garnish these with. I'm going to try to take a tiny bit of cinnamon. If you wanted icing sugar, you could use icing sugar. And voila, you have a strawberry crepe made at home, nice and easy. Thank you for joining us at Open Oven.